he's not this rah-rah guy like you wrote in the article, but how are you seeing Quinn Hughes becoming like a leader for this team, and what did you learn in this article?
Yeah. Also, one thing I wanted to quickly clarify on, when I referred to Garland there, I don't like Boudreaux isn't. I don't think he's down on Garland just because of his size. Like I
Right.
don't. I think it's a lot more than that. I'm just saying that the way he referred to him was, I
Yeah.
thought it was pretty interesting.
You
But
know, it's interesting. And so the way that Boudreaux always says is that guy's too cute. I think that's might be
yeah,
some of the things he's talking about with Garland. It's too cute. The little spins in the corner, too cute. I think that might
yeah,
be what he's sort
yeah,
of implying there.
yeah. But yeah, with Hughes, it's been interesting. I think going into this season, Canucks management talked to him about, we want to see you sort of embrace a leadership role, and I think in his own mind, Hughes just recognized that, okay, I'm ready. Like it's time, because I think coming off of the sophomore year he had in 2021, he was pissed off. He was really upset and disappointed with himself after that year in terms of his defensive game.
Mhm.
Once he fixed once he felt he worked hard that summer going into last season, and felt he fixed that, then it was okay. Like I've taken care of my defensive side of it, and I feel a lot more comfortable about my two-way game. He looked at it, okay, I'm going into my fourth year. I've got this big contract now. He also mentioned, which was crazy to me, that he's the longest tenured defenseman on the team right now.
Yeah, interesting.
And I think all of that clicked, and he's like, all right, this is the time for me to kind of step up and be more of a leader. And I think Horvat highlighted that, hey, like I've definitely noticed a big difference in terms of how he's speaking up a little bit more, especially even to veteran guys, and pointing out things that he sees. JT Miller said that there's going to be times in this season where players want to hear a different voice,
Mm.
and he's like, we're going to need Quinn. Like we need Quinn to be that guy, because guys listen to him and they have that respect for him. So I think he has been more vocal at times. Again, it hasn't necessarily been the rah like big locker room speeches that you might expect. But Luke Shen brought up some really interesting points, that to give sort of feedback anymore, in terms of saying, like, the example Shen gave was off a D zone face off. It'll be like, all right, if we get the puck this way, I'll jump into this hole. I think we can execute this play,
Mm.
and let's run it this way, right? Like kind of directing traffic, kind of being the quarterback on the ice. In the offensive zone too, Shen said in one of the recent games that he took a shot that didn't really result in anything, and he was like, hey, like in that spot, I want you, like, just give the puck to me. Like I can make a play here. And it's a back and forth. It's not Quinn sort of like demanding that things be done his way, but he's speaking up and he's giving that feedback. Whereas Shen was like, earlier he didn't do that
Right.
because he wasn't confident enough to tell the veterans that, hey, like let's try things this way, or let's try things that way. So he's leading in that sense. And I also think that one thing Horvat brought up, which was really interesting, is if, for as much as I think there's a stereotype of a leader being loud and abrasive and big speeches, at the end of the day, Horvat said, in having talked to a lot of guys, that stuff just gets a little exhausting when it happens all the time. That guys respond way better to players who are just leading by example. I mean, even Kevin Bieksa, in a recent article written by my colleague Eric Stevens at The Athletic, talking about Alex Edler hitting 1,000 games, Bieksa said the best leaders don't even know that they're leaders, if that makes sense. It's just that they hold themselves to such a high standard and they're pushing themselves in that way. And I think Hughes has worked hard in order to push himself as a professional. And it's hard. Like it's
Mhm.
the whole idea of leading by example is a lot easier said than done, because when you're an NHL team, and especially when you have the type of taxing travel schedule that the Canucks have, you're gonna have nights where you land at 1 a.m., you're in bed at 3 a.m., you have an 11:30 a.m. practice, you're off little sleep, the team's losing in a funk, and guys are just down. Like that's normal on any team, right? And in that sort of environment, it could be easy for a player as talented as Quinn Hughes to sort of be able to just coast through the practice. And that's what a lot of guys around the league will do, mail in the odd practice.
Right.
And I think as a leader now for Hughes, and even as Pedersen grows into this, it's like understanding that as one of the best players on the team, you have a unique weight and authority to where if you push yourself, through that mental grind, you have that responsibility to where if other guys on the team see you pushing that hard, they're gonna be like damn, like I can't, like I gotta match that. Like
Right.
it's embarrassing if I don't. If the best player on the team who doesn't have to put in this work is putting in this work, it's an embarrassment. I'm letting him down if I'm not working my absolute bag off, as opposed to if a guy is just down or he's just coasting through it, nothing special. Not saying a guy's sulking. It's easy for another teammate to be like, all right, like I can take it easy too.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I heard a quote the other day of like it takes a group to be able to bring everyone up together, but it only takes one person to bring a group down. And that was an interesting quote here in that. But to a similar degree of what you said of the hardest players working the hardest, like I look at it as like, hey, Curtis Lazar is going to work hard in practice. Kyle Burr is going to work hard in practice. But those guys aren't the guys that are breaking through the wall of having the team follow through. They are like they're
Yeah.
setting a standard, they're pushing on the wall. But guys like Pedersen and Hughes, and when those guys are working in practice, they're breaking through the wall that everyone's going through.
Well, it's also just like I'll be honest. Like in a team environment, you want guys like Lazar and Burrows around who are positive forces and work hard
Yep.
and don't complain or and are low maintenance. But at the end of the day, they're like their fourth line, third pair, extra defender type of guys. They're not core guys. They're not like they're like those guys are expected. The role is to be those like energetic, sort of always positive, sort of like Brad Hunt role type guys. It's the top players that have the weight and the responsibility and have that just have that star power to where it's like um guys have to respect them if they're working, if they're pushing that hard. It's like you like those are the guys that can single-handedly sort of like not single-handedly, but those are the guys that can really move the needle in terms of helping change the culture of a team, with their sort of work ethic, with their professionalism, with what they demand, and they're able to hold guys accountable. A guy like Kyle Burrows, for as great as he is, and I love the guy, he's not going to be able to hold.
No.
He's not going to be able to hold. Like, let's say, like, I don't want to pick out specific games, but if players, but if there's a top player who's not pulling his weight, like if a guy like Kyle Burrows comes up to him or doesn't even say anything, but just like is pushing him hard, it's just like the guy's gonna be like, "Who are you? You're a seventh defenseman.
Right.
Like, leave me alone."
Yeah, no, I think what you're kind of like hinting at is like the top players are going to set the standard that needs to be met.
Yeah,
Right. And then those guys around them are going to exceed the standard, which maybe, raises up kind of everyone
yeah.
together. But those main guys, the real leaders, they're going to set the bar and you got to be above that bar.
If you
Right.
don't have it at the top, you're not gonna have it on your team as a whole.
Yeah. Another thing I found interesting in the article, and this is what I wanted to add to it, was you brought up a couple things of like Quinn Hughes taking Niels Höglander under his wing on the road, Pod Colson taking, I remember the story about them going to the movies together. I think Pod Colson talked about seeing Dune and he didn't understand anything, but Hughes was the same way. He didn't understand the movie either. But I saw leadership quality last year at the end of season media availability from Quinn Hughes when there was some, I think, questionable questions thrown towards Brock Besser. It was difficult to be in the room. You kind of saw the other players standing up there freeze up quite a bit with some of the questions that Brock wasn't comfortable to answer. Those are some my ideas, pretty ridiculous questions to a couple of them. But Quinn Hughes was the guy who stepped up every time when Brock like couldn't talk. And
Yeah.
that was a very impressive leadership quality that I saw just right there in that moment. Because listen, Pedersen was there with them. I think Demko was maybe the fourth guy, or maybe it was Garland. Anyways, I know Pedersen was at the table, but it just felt like Quinn Hughes was the guy who, when he realized that Brock was in trouble, stepped in and picked up a teammate in a moment that was obviously extremely hard for Brock to deal with looking back at that time. And that initially to me was like that's what a leader does. And this isn't just hockey, right? This is just like leadership in general. Quinn stepped up for his guy in that moment, and that was huge to me. That was one of the biggest examples of leadership that I've seen in years with this Canucks team, was what Quinn Hughes did that day on the podium. That was huge to me. I always thought about that. And when the thought of like captaincy gets thrown around, this is why I bring up Quinn Hughes as a potential guy.